everything seemed to be going in the right direction. Bitcoin was heading back to retest the $109,000 price range. But what happened? We seem to have taken a pretty heavy dump, 2.63% so far, and Bitcoin on its decline. Is 100K going to hold? Are we going a little bit lower through this weekend? We're going to break down exactly what has happened and what you need to know when it comes to your cryptocurrency portfolio this weekend. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss a beat in this bull market. With that being said, let's get into the video. So once again, you assume we're going in the right direction and Bitcoin decides to take a little bit of a dump. Here we are on the daily chart, down about 2.6%. Altcoins obviously then getting smashed. Ethereum actually was having a pretty good day, but you can see this big red fat candle off that 106 resistance line that we have tested so many times before and not broke through. So you could argue this was probably expected. I think what's bullish is that when we do break through this, expect some pretty strong push to the upside. But once again, rejected. Let's talk a little bit about why that is. But first, Grayscale now really, in fact, scaling their operation. And I guess, what's this video? I could sit here and tell you that the world's ending and the Bitcoin's going back to 92,000 and all those kind of things. There is still some very much optimistic news going on. Grayscale announcing the Bitcoin mining industry ETF. That's as well as a ETF for XRP. Grayscale going bullish. More on that a little bit later on. But look at this, $9.32 million in long liquidations, about 10.46 overall. So not the biggest in the last hour, but the 24 hours, $165 million. Extreme volatility in the market going into this weekend. We actually saw a little bit of net outflows from ARC21, Fidelity offloading a little bit of their ETF products. But what is the main catalyst? Yes, prices coming down, liquidations from trade. Obviously, everyone thought the market had recovered, that we were going to go long. Remember, we always say on this channel that if the market is going up, it generally wrecks you going the other way. So if you think the market's going to go one way, it somehow always manages to pivot and go back down the other way. So what did we get? Well, there's a couple of things coming out of Trump's administration, namely the flight that got the collision with the helicopter, and our thoughts go out to anyone affected by that. However, what does this mean? Well, you've seen tariffs coming in. You've seen kind of Donald Trump a little bit crazy when it kind of comes into this, but Trump's comments have initially shaking the markets up. We also see 21 shares filing for a Dotcoin ETF, Polkadot, another one, but this is a big deal when it talks about Trump and more importantly, what this kind of goes. So this kind of is a pretty big deal. He's obviously talked about the impact of volatility, and a lot of people now are starting to question his meme coin and his agenda that sits behind it. In fact, people quoting here says Trump's action signaling new trade war with significant implications. His tariffs could have a short-term negative impact on US inflation. Ultimately, what is Donald Trump doing? He's playing chicken with Canada and Mexico, announcing tariffs on both of those countries. Today, the markets don't like it. It's as simple as that. Risk on assets do not like nervousness, and that's pretty much what Trump's doing. Now, the overall sentiment behind it, longer term, is probably a good thing for bond markets, assets, treasuries, all that kind of good stuff. In the short term, though, not great. The headline reflects the reality Trump signals the start of a trade war by threatening to impose tariffs if these demands from trading partners go unmet. The declaration effectively means imposing additional tariffs on imported goods, limiting the import of products from certain countries. So far, we've seen it with Canada, Mexico, China, Colombia, and many more. Ultimately, the consumer will pay more, which obviously then hedges against inflation. Now, what people don't realize, let's take Colombia for an example. If you want Colombian coffee, then you're going to pay an additional tariff. However, if you wanted Brazilian coffee, then it's the same price. So I do think markets overreact a little bit. Nervousness going into the market. Are we going to see further tariffs, further announcements from Trump? Like I said, risk on assets do not like this, and I think this is kind of where it all gets played out. But no measures can currently prevent tariffs from China, Mexico, and Canada, but they may increase these. Ultimately, though, you're going to see things on chips, as well as oil, gas, aluminum, steel, copper. These are all things Trump wants to get to, including reclaiming of the Panama Canal, tariffs on the EU, ultimately just this huge onslaught of tariffs and trade wars, which, like I said, risk assets simply do not like. So I think it's important to reference it. What do I think? Well, look, the reality is eventually, if we get a weakening dollar, which we are seeing, if trade wars do start, if tariffs are in there, the consumer ultimately loses out. Now you could say, well, that maybe they won't do as much on their actual product, but risk on assets could actually get a benefit from this. We'll have to see how it all plays out. But currently Bitcoin 102, 131 going into the weekend. Not the worst place to be, 2.49%, but it is interesting that we have seen this decline specifically related back to Trump. And in fact, we haven't really seen anything from him in relation to the meme coin, or more importantly, that Bitcoin strategic reserve. Interestingly enough, there's 15 states now looking for that reserve, which I thought was very, very interesting. We talked about this on my live stream earlier on. And actually, some of them are waiting approval. This obviously being a big deal as well. So you can see some of them here. We've got Alabama, Arizona, which is as near, as well as Utah, Florida, Illinois, Kentucky, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming. Again, just shows you how bullish this is, particularly Cynthia Lumen. So in all of this, with a really challenging market, with a 2.5% dip on Bitcoin, there is obviously still some significant upside to come. So be mindful of all of this. We interestingly got into a pretty hot weekend. Watch out, it could be extremely volatile, but I think next week could set us up for a pretty interesting week. Let me know what you think about it all in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. We appreciate your time. Hit that subscribe button as well on the way out, and we'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye-bye.